What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here, ready to talk some football with my good buddy Andy Herman, the creator of the Pack-A-Day podcast and a purveyor of fine Packers takes everywhere you go on the internet. Andy, how the hell are you today?
I am doing amazing. We are post-draft. Now we get to open all of our presents and look at all the players in greater detail. We'll get ready for rookie minicamp this upcoming weekend. I'm in a good spot. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I tell you what, I was not feeling it at first when Brian traded down a couple times on day 2. Accumulated all those extra picks. I was thinking this is going to be the longest weekend ever. But then I will say, after the draft was concluded and I saw the list of the 13 names and I kind of was starting to, dive in on these 13 new Green Bay Packers, I'm super excited about this draft class in a way that I really haven't been. You know me, I'm not a draft guy. That is not my thing. But holy cow, you talk about a team that is ready to hit the reset button hard. This draft class should help them do that. Looking at the totality of those picks, is there a theme that jumps out to you? Is there a player that you think, that's the key? Or what were your general impressions coming off of this draft from Brian?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. I think there's a couple themes, and I think Brian did a really nice job of navigating this draft in a couple ways. I think, first of all, what I really appreciated is that he identified the positions that were strong, like tight end, for example, and he attacked them aggressively on day 2 of the draft by picking up 2 tight ends that were both, in my opinion, could have been late day 1, early round 2 guys in a lesser tight end draft, and he attacks it aggressively and gets them at a really great value where he got them. And I know everyone's like, gotta have a safety. You gotta get a safety. It was a bad safety draft. And you know what? If it's a bad safety draft, avoid it. It's not to say that some of the safeties in this draft aren't going to turn out well. I'm sure they will, but you focus your efforts on the positions that are deeper and you get more quality players. And I thought he did a really good job with that. I thought he kind of identified early in the draft that edge. If you wanted to get one, if you wanted to get a high end one, those guys were going to go fast. We saw basically all throughout the draft, from Will Anderson going early to Tyree Wilson to Van Ness to immediately after that, you've got McDonald, you've got the Georgia kid, like you've got all of these guys that immediately come off. And there was a huge run at the end of day 1. If they would have tried to wait for an edge rusher day 2, day 3, I think it would have gone very poorly for them. So I think he attacked that aggressively. I think the overarching theme, I think if you kind of break this down into sections, it was clearly we need a premium position. We do the same thing we're going to do every single year. Premium position, young player, super developmental. We're swinging for the fences. We want a big time player round 1. Then it's, okay, we're going to give Jordan weapon. We need to fill out our wide receiver and tight end room. We're going to go get weapons on day 2. And then day 3, I think you mixed in some sort of classic Packers picks with some special teams with some clear needs at quarterback and kicker that maybe they reached for a little bit, but we're a little bit more willing to go need at that point of the draft.
I haven't had a chance yet. I know you put up on the Pack-A-Day podcast YouTube channel the deep dive into Van Ness. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but what are the Cliff Notes version that might whet people's appetite to go take a look? Because, look, I don't think – it was funny because leading up to this draft, as you said, if you follow what the Packers like to do as far as a premium position, a young guy, a lot's been made about him not starting at Iowa, which I think you and I can both agree is a whole lot of nothing. The idea that, this is an ascending player and a kid who probably, does have some stuff to work on, but the tools are all there. What's your takeaway after having gone down deep, so to speak, looking at his tape and breaking his game down?
Hey, and we have to say, too, both of us predicted the pick. We got literally everything else wrong, I'm sure, throughout the entire weekend.
Most of it, yeah. But the Van Ness thing, it just seemed like an all-time Packers pick. It screamed a Green Bay Packers pick, and it was.
Very much so. Yes. That we got right. Like I said, everything else remains to be seen, but no, he's a really fun player. And I think he can win with athleticism from day 1. I think that's a really fun aspect of him. If you look at all the premier edge rushers, whether you go the Bosa's, a TJ Watt, a Von Miller, like you name your favorite pass rusher, right? It starts with having a tool set that just most human beings on the earth don't have. And that's what Lucas Van Ness has. He's an extremely high athlete. I did a little fun exercise. He was a better RAS score guy at safety than Branch was. He was a better RAS score at wide receiver than Jordan Addison was. He basically had the same RAS score as at running back at Jahmyr Gibbs did. Same RAS score at defensive tackle as Brian Brzee did. Like you can go position by position and you can basically find some guy. Michael Mayer had a better RAS score at tight end than Mayer did. Like that's the type of freak athlete that we're talking about here. You combine that with a guy that doesn't give up on plays, is all heart, intensity, desire, former hockey player, led his high school in penalty minutes at hockey, like just showing you the type of guy that he is. Right. I just love all of those sort of things that you can't teach about him. And then, some of the things that you're going to need to be able to, pick up over time are very similar to Rashawn Gary, who was also kind of that, hugely athletic raw ball of clay coming out of school. He has to put a pass rush plan together. He's got a push pull. He's got a long arm. He can get by you sometimes with that speed. He loves doing a bull rush, but he doesn't really have a plan of attack. It's just, I'm going to fly at you a million miles per hour, and I'm fast and I'm strong, and good luck. And he beat Peter Skoronski at Northwestern. He beat Paris Johnson Jr. at Ohio State. Like, it's not like he's beating bums. He was beating some really, really good players. I think it was his fourth or fifth snap in his entire career at the University of Iowa. In his very first year playing, fourth or fifth snap, first game, he just takes the guard, throws him aside, goes and gets the quarterback. It's just like from day one, this guy was just built different, and he's going to be a very fun, maneuverable piece in Green Bay.
Going from the defensive side over to all the offensive weapons that they added, you mentioned the tight ends. They took a couple of wide receivers. Is there one that you think has the possibility, and no one's holding you to this immediately after the draft. No one here at Cheesehead TV will hold this to you. But like the idea, like your first blush, as far as that's the guy who you think, okay, is probably going to be able to help them the most right out of the gate. Because we all know, making that jump from college to the pros is tough, whether it's a tight end or a wide receiver. But some guys seem to have the ability to maybe hit the ground running a little bit faster than others.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of spots that are up for grabs at wide receiver, right? So like you've got, after Christian Watson, I think the next 2, 3, 4, 5, and I know Romeo Doubs is going to be the favorite, but
right.
all those next spots are up for grabs with any of the guys that were drafted last year,
agree.
any of the guys that were drafted this year. So Jaden Reed, all of these guys are going to have a huge opportunity. But I think, you look at Reed, you look at Kraft, you look at Musgrave, all three guys. I mean, if you told me that they played significant snaps in 2020, I think that's probably almost the expectation at this point, unless they go out and add something additional, which I kind of don't think they're going to. So those, all three of them. And I think of all three of those, Tucker Kraft is kind of the guy to me. I know he was drafted the third of those three, but he's the guy that I think comes in and just kind of takes the Bobby Tunyon role from day one. And I don't think he's going to give it up. I think he's going to be a wide tight end. I think they're going to put him there. I think he's going to play through some ups and downs. Tight end is a very difficult position to transition from any school to the NFL, much less a lower level program. So I think that's going to take a little bit of time, but I think he grabs that by the horns from day one and just owns it. And you're going to see a lot of playing time out of him. I think Musgrave I think where you just plug and play Kraft, I think Musgrave is the guy that I guarantee you Matt LaFleur's already got notebook pages full of stuff of how he can potentially use Luke Musgrave as a mismatch piece. And the thing I love about him as a blocker, he did a ton of the stuff at Oregon State that Green Bay likes to do in their offense, which is really, really fun. The other thing is, as a blocker, you might look at Musgrave and be like, oh, he's kind of thin and he gets out muscled at the point of attack. And you'd be 1,000,000% right on both of those observations. He gets to his landmark every single time. He's a wall off kind of blocker. You can tell he cares about it. He has some attention to detail with it. If he can just put on a little functional strength over time, I know everyone's just saying like, he's just going to be a move tight end, just a receiving type guy. I actually think there's upside there for him as a blocker as well. Excited about all three of those guys, but I'll say Tucker Kraft is kind of the easiest plug and play guy from day one.
I very much agree with your idea that, I mean, you're not putting DeGuara there. You're not like, I know Tyler Davis, God bless you, but that's not what I want rolling out there if I'm Matt LaFleur. I think you're spot on as far as Kraft goes. You mentioned the possibility, right, that they could potentially still bring in veteran wide receiver or tight end. And I do think there's a possibility there. It's funny, though, how completely different that feels now. Like prior to the draft, I thought, oh, it's a no-brainer. They got to do it. At this point, it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't. Like just because, especially after what Brian said as far, the idea is for these guys to grow together. You got a whole new kind of group on offense. Why bring in some broken down old vet, with apologies to whoever's out there, just to stunt the growth and take reps away from this group that needs to work together? So I think it's a possibility, but at this point now, I'd kind of be surprised.
Kind of cheering against it, to be honest, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't need another Sammy Watkins sniping snaps from younger players, right? I just like let those guys develop together, let them play, let them grow, let them learn. I would rather have you stumble through some issues with rookie guys than stumble through the issues that we saw out of a veteran wide receiver that they had a season ago, right? Let those guys play. And I'm kind of that way all throughout the team. I don't know how you feel about the safety position. Listen, they may not have a starting safety on this team, but
no. I think safety, you can make it work. Where the one spot I think it's possible is tackle. Because we've seen Brian do it so much throughout the years, and he didn't do it last year for the first time, and we saw how that kind of bit him. You know what I mean? Like last year, if there was a year that probably could have used an on the street free agent tackle added, say, late in the process, it was probably last year. And it
Yeah.
really wrecked the first part of their season. Now, again, I understand they've used a ton of draft capital all throughout the offensive line. They have guys they like. There's no doubt about it. But I just think if there is a guy sitting there in like late July who's on the street and is amiable to a 1 year deal, yeah, I don't. That's the one spot where I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility. I think
And
that's something he'll look at.
they didn't draft an offensive lineman, obviously. 13 picks, didn't
Not
draft an
one.
offensive lineman, first time since 2015. So,
Right.
yeah, it's definitely within the realm of possibility.
I do want to talk a little bit about guys way further down the class here, especially those first the guys taken day 3, the 7th round. They have 4 selections of the 4, and I'm excited about all 4 of them. But if you had to look at one of them, is there one that gets you more excited than the others? A guy who you think, obviously 7th round, maybe not a ton expected of you, but we've seen diamonds in the rough kind of make their case, so to speak, at training camp before. Is there a guy you think has the possibility to maybe turn some heads starting in camp?
It's funny because I always tend to like the guys that the Packers draft the last in the 7th round. I think it was Kylan Hill was their last 7th rounder.
Yep.
And, obviously things didn't exactly turn out, but
Well, he showed the juice. He showed he could do it.
He
No
did.
doubt about it.
Just some, weird circumstances come to play. Samori Toure was, I think, behind, Jonathan Ford and a couple other guys last year. But this year, it's the last 2. I love Anthony Johnson and Grant Dubose. You talk Anthony Johnson, we talk about the safety position. I was just talking to Ben Fennell, by the way, is freaking out about Anthony Johnson, about what he could potentially bring to the team. He posted a lot of great clips already. I'm with Ben. I think there's an avenue, and I know we never want to put an expectation on a rookie, period, much less a 7th round guy. It's foolhardy at best. I legitimately think there's an avenue towards legitimate snaps for Anthony Johnson at safety. You've got Darnell Savage. He's probably there mostly just because his contract's guaranteed.
Yep.
You've got, 2, basic vet minimum guys and Tavarius Moore and Rudy Ford, who played well a season ago. You got Ennis Gaines. Tariq Carpenter apparently is moving to linebacker.
Ennis Gaines, my eternal love, who never really quite puts it together. I love Ennis, though. Hey, man, he at least flies around and cares. That's half the battle.
The 2 biggest games last year, the last 2 games of the season, they played him 17, 18 snaps in the slot of all places. So,
I'm down.
But after that, Dallin Levitt's just a special teams guy at this point. Right. You don't want him playing safety. Like, there's legitimate opportunity that Anthony Johnson can come in and win snaps. So he is a hard hitter. He will dislodge the ball both as a run defense, like as a guy who can force a fumble, but also dislodge a pass in the passing game. Special teams value is certainly there as well, which I'm sure Rich Bisaccia is going to love. He just has everything that you kind of want at that safety position. Not the fastest guy in the world, but transition from corner. And I love guys that, we saw Micah Hyde do it. Guys that transitioned from corner, had the 1 year of safety and started becoming more. He didn't have a single pick as a corner, had 2, I think, right away as a safety at Iowa State. So I think he has just more of a natural fit there. And then Grant Dubose, you talk about, didn't test like the fastest in the world, but hits everything that Green Bay looks for, has every contested catch you could possibly imagine. In the same game, I want to say it was Duke, but it was the same game, had a deep ball down the field where he makes an explosive reception and gets in for the end zone. He also has a crosser over the middle of the field where there's 3 defenders conversing on him. And he just says, you know what, screw it. I'm running right through all 3 of you guys. And he gets in the end zone and finds a way anyway. Those are the type of guys, when there's snaps available at wide receiver, the 3 rookies last year, the 3 rookies this year, we talked about those spots, those reps are up for grabs. You got 3 wide receivers in this draft that are going to go and compete for every single one of those snaps and have had to do it throughout their entire careers. I'm really excited to see how that's going to play out.
The only thing working against DeBose is that he's not Matt Landers, who I loved and ended up signing as an undrafted free agent in Seattle. So I will be closely monitoring their careers just so I can.
Seattle gathering the tiers of Packer wide receivers that everyone wanted in Jackson Smith and Jigba and Matt Landers. So.
Exactly, 100%. Well, what did you? Let's talk about that for a second, because you are correct. Of course, the entirety. Well, maybe not the entirety, but a whole lot of Packers fans were really hoping for JSN. What does it tell you that the supposed, I guess consensus #1 wide receiver in the draft didn't go until 20? The fact that Seattle took him where they did, and the Packers sitting there at 13, I'm thanking Brian Gutekunst for not making that pick, because I think that shows the value of how the league views him. And I'm not saying he's not going to be a really good player. I'm not saying he's like a bum or anything like that, but I think it was smart not to go that route. As you said, to go and get a guy with a ton of upside at a premium position rather than, I think, what would have been a reach in JSN.
I think probably 80% of mock drafts had either JSN, Michael Mayer, or Dalton Kincaid going to Green Bay. and
Yep.
not any of them went in the top 20. Mayer goes round 2, Kincaid goes 25, JSN goes 20. So, I do think that this is another example of Brian Gutekunst understanding, the positional value of the draft and understanding that, again, wide receiver, tight end was a strong draft. So he knew he could probably get a guy or two in round 2 and 3, which is exactly what they did. Didn't need to reach for a tight end at pick 13 or pick 15 when they were originally there. So he didn't need to do that. Wide receiver, as much as JSN, I love JSN. I very much would have considered JSN at that spot. But at the same token, this is a bad wide receiver draft. And they didn't reach for, what probably would have been the number 3-4 receiver in a lot of drafts in JSN. I love him. I think he's fantastic. But a lot of times what teams value, especially early in drafts, are the outside wide receivers, because how many wide receivers that were drafted in the first 3-4 days of this draft and just throughout were slot guys. Like
Right.
the draft is just riddled with undersized guys that are going to have to play in the slot in the NFL. And the NFL knows that those guys you can ultimately find. And I believe that JSN is a step ahead of those guys and is a dynamic slot receiver. And there's absolutely value there. But at the same token, you can find slot guys in the NFL. It's those outside guys that are really difficult. I think that's why teams didn't value JSN quite as much in the top 20. So, what's always valuable? Premium edge rushers that can set the edge, that can play run defense, and that can get after the quarterback. They got that, and they waited for round 2, round 5, round 7 to go attack those wide receiver spots.
I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the 2 picks that probably caused the most consternation on the Cheesehead TV live stream when they were taken, in the kicker and the quarterback. Both of the selections I was completely understanding. Like, I get the picks being made where they were made. I understand the positions. And here's the joy for someone who doesn't care about college football or know anything about college football and doesn't do a deep dive into quarterbacks or kickers during the draft process. I'm like, oh, good. They got a kicker and a quarterback. They needed those. But everyone on my timeline and everyone in the Cheesehead TV chat and everybody I was looking at on the internet was just killing both of those picks because the kicker can't kick, the quarterback can't throw. Oh, my God, it's a disaster. And I'm sitting here thinking, it's a day 3 pick. I mean, these are dart throws to begin with. They're filling a little bit of need. Like, I don't tell me, Andy, should I be concerned about the kicker and the quarterback? I guess that's what I need to know.
I'll start by saying no reason for concern. I do think there's slightly different variations here. I'll start with the kicker. I'm totally that's pick 207. 207.
207.
207.
And people are upset.
And here's the thing, like they did obviously need, it's like literally the 49ers drafted one in the 3rd round. The Patriots drafted one extremely early.
Right.
So getting one in the end of the 6th round, a compensatory pick in the 6th round at pick 207, I'm not losing any sleep over that. And here's the other thing that I'll say about that. If I had to bet, if you told me right now that one of the players in this draft class played 15 years for the Green Bay Packers, I'll put money down on the kicker. There's probably a much better chance that he plays like a 15-year career than maybe anyone else does on the team. So spending that on a kicker, I don't mind as much. Now, the quarterback also, don't lose sleep over it. If the biggest thing that we are nitpicking is which quarterback they selected in the 5th round, we're off to a great start for this NFL draft. So let's put that aside to begin with. I do think, though, I talked to Tony Pauline. He was under the impression, and he's very, he's involved in this stuff, very detailed.
He's plugged in.
Said,
yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, he's plugged in. If he thought that if Green Bay didn't take Clifford, that he wasn't going to get drafted at all. Who knows if that's ultimately true? Maybe somebody takes him. What I would say is, if Green Bay doesn't take, Clifford, and they get to the 7th round in one of those 7th round picks, and they want to take Sean Clifford, and he's gone, are you really losing much sleep over that?
Nope.
No. So at that point, I think Green Bay maybe overthought it a little bit and maybe could have gone best player available at the position and maybe taken something else. At the end of the day, like I said, if that's what we're squabbling about, we're in a very, very good spot for this draft.
I do think the Packers are in a very, very good spot. I'm really excited to watch this draft class hit the ground running, so to speak, when training camp opens. Hopefully I'll see you there, Andy, as I do each and every summer. We'll have to have you over to Corey's house for a beverage or two and do some videos and all the good things. Andy, I really appreciate your time, man. Always great to talk football with you. Anything coming up with Pack a Day Podcast? Anything special? I know I'm part of your car wash here the day after the weekend of the draft, as you talk to basically every outlet on the internet. But if there's anything podcast-wise, video-wise, Pack a Day Podcast, what should people know?
Yeah, so some really fun episodes coming up. So just posted the Tony Pauline episode on the Pack a Day Podcast YouTube channel. Have Ben Fennell coming up tomorrow as well, so people can check out that. Had a amazing conversation with Ben that people are definitely going to want to check out. And then just a new episode, obviously 365 days a year. So make sure to subscribe and never miss it.
Never miss it. Andy, thanks so much for the time, man, and I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it, Aaron. Have a good one.